Geico presents sharing versus oversharing. Earlier this week, Claire Tippins shared a princess nickname generator, 3 pictures of her dog wearing a tutu, and 2 online quizzes, including what candy is your dream castle made of? Claire, your sharing has tipped the sugar scale and turned into oversharing. But have no fear, princess. Geico has something worth sharing with your internet kingdom, like how you could save hundreds on your car insurance just by visiting geico.com. No magic wand required. Geico, 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance.
Blog Talk Radio.
First World Order Radio, finally, we are on the air. No doubt. All right.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio.
We get on into some of that order consciousness tonight.
First World Order Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m.
We got to talk about what is taking place on the planet.
There's always going to be somebody in the building on First World Order Radio. First, we need to let you know we're going to be doing more shows, giving out more information on Wednesdays. Wednesday at 8 o'clock, we are now going to make this the hottest day of the week.
Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. An indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the root based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it. Preceding others in time, order, importance. The most prominent parts, voices, or instruments. Earthly state of human concerns in existence. An indefinite multitude, quantity, or distance. System regulates to bring about specifics in the root based on value and natural characteristics. Current radiates electromagnetistics of sound through the air, same as your thoughts transmits it.
You need to understand how magical this something like this every Wednesday can become. So you need to start getting your calendar right, get your schedule right. You need to know our intentions straight out.
All right, so, these clues are given throughout the various languages was to piece the puzzle of this ancient mystery school back together again.
And what we plan on doing, both of us, is bringing y'all some surefire dynamite. We're going to take this level up a notch. We're going to have stuff to do here. This is not just going to be about philosophies and theories, shit that works.
You have an activated pineal gland which that produced this black chemical called melanin.
What we did was gave a hard line in the sand between the different definitions of esoteric study and exoteric study. Playtime is over.
I don't need to be a dope boy, my poetry is dope enough. Trapping interstellar while my third eye open up. See through all the lies that y'all telling with a straight face. Return of the luminous ones. Y'all better make way to find a chapter. Find a collapse on all you politicians. They politicking how to lead a world, no pot to piss in. The way I think is more deep and in the Grand Canyon. I guarantee this black man would be the man standing. My premonition matched the old Met calendar. It's always accurate like a lightweight challenger. For all you wicked riches and the Wizard of Oz, you and that man behind the curtain, yeah, y'all fixing to fall. Only a matter of time before shit hit the fan. Here's an idiot's guide for you on how to get a man. I don't need a bunch of homies to ride or die with me. I can call on Hey Roo to fly the skies with me. Going through the transition and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the folk. Came back my angel time to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned to the birth. We going through the transition and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the folk. Came back my angel time to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned to his birth. When I'm riding on this city streets, never really miss a beat. To the point of no return, unless I turn another cheek. Catch me on my ditty box, smooth as I wanna be. Just being me, never chillin' with the wannabes. God in the flesh, dated bad sister lectures. Because my history is more than they can understand it. My melanated skin, star brush from the astro. I'm made of dark energy created from black holes. Know thyself, the only one you can lean on. I got some scoop bush that y'all can break y'all weed on. Our here's Martin Luther King and slave ships. But what about the underwater cities and spaceships? My mystical mind, we had the government covering. But if the OMAD will fly away like a mothership, we're African people, we're the real Anunnaki, wearing feathers on their heads, just a few feet taller than me. Through the transition, and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the Pope. Came back my angel times to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned since birth. We going through the transition, and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the Pope. Came back my angel times to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned since birth. Yo, don't look at me the same, I ain't nothing like I used to be. Upgraded daily through the lies and all the foolery. My dream became lucid, I travel back in time, collecting life data for my subconscious mind. That father let me know that anything is possible by pulling down the universe through my crown chakra. Manipulate the energy is all an illusion. Knowing who you are kills all the confusion. Why 85% judge off my appearance? I use alchemy to create the world potential. My lyrics turn divas right back into queens. Why dope boys that think twice appearing back on the scene? Everybody gone mad, blaming media outlet. The new black Hollywood chosen straight out the projects. Global agenda war sucking up to the master. While the whole community going up in disaster. We going through the transition, and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the Pope. Came back my angel times to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned since birth. We going through the transition, and that's all she wrote. Put on my uncle, gave my Jesus peace back to the Pope. Came back my angel times to bring heaven on earth. I was the last golden child that returned since birth. Since birth. Since birth.
Peace. Back once again with your host, Dr. Alain Bey. All right, we're going to try to get in tonight. Got some good information for you coming up. But before we get into the information, let me call on my co-host, Brother Fahim Mel. Are you here, brother?
Hey, I'll tell you, Washington East, Dr. Aline.
Hey, I'll tell you, Washington East. How you doing tonight, brother?
Doing well, God. Very well. How's God doing tonight?
Excellent. All right, well, we're going to get into the cover-up of Melanated Extraterrestrials, the Mandela Effect, and PSYOP Ops programs. All right, but I got a little thing to go over before we bring on our special guest. Let me see here. Before I pull up the video and play it, let me talk about Norman Bertrand. All right, give some of his credentials. If you never read the book, Rainmaker of Saturn, the book is going for over $1,500 right now on Amazon. All right. When you look into his background and his credentials, he began as an alumnus of Ames Research Laboratory, NACA, which is the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, which is the predecessor to Ames Research Center. At NASA, he worked for 12 years as a research scientist. All right, that's just a little bit of his background. So we want to play what he stated about this 7 feet or more tall black people from outer space coming from off the ship. This is what he says.
Okay, people have asked me, I call them vehicles. No, I did not call them vehicles. That was too new for me. Okay. I had a sense of from all is a vehicle. They can move. You know, they're just like a missile. So, where would you manufacture one that's earthlings? And that's our purpose.
So are you not that those vehicles contain beings or like us?
If you want to know about people kind of thing, there is the chip.
People with dark skin, black skin. Were they tall? Very tall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever been in touch with him? No?
All right, you heard him. The lady asked him, dark-skinned beings. He said, no, black. And then asked how tall were they? And he said at least 7 feet. And she repeated it. So this is a former NASA advisor and scientist stating that off-sea craft pay tall, dark-skinned brothers. All right, so we're going to bring on our guests. Bob Byrne, if you're here, please hit 1 so I can bring you on in.
Peace, guys.
Peace. How you doing, guys?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Nice to be on again, gentlemen.
Excellent, excellent. We ready for you. You know, we need to
you started it off. You started popping off right away, yeah.
Well, I just needed to get some verification for you, that's all.
I love
it. Coming from NASA, as Dr. Collins say, now they have it in black and in white.
That's right. Well, you started off with Bergman really goes into detail in his book. I don't have books, but I know a couple of people who actually purchased books for the amount of money that's ridiculous. Norman Bergman, his background alone verifies that he's not some quackadoodle off the street. And even when he spoke, I have issues with Project Camelot, especially with the particular interviewer there. I won't give her any credence, but just the fact that they try to deviate him away from saying, always trying to say if it's dark and they'll say brown or dark colored. They never wanted to note that it's a black or negroid, and that's why in a lot of videos you'll hear me use the word negroid, because what I've noticed in the white community is that anytime they talk about black people, they always try to make it seem like it's something else other than what looks like us. And if you don't denote that it's of negroid background or person of color, they'll say person of color, they'll say darker entity, they'll try to, deviate you away from that actual vision of it being something similar to us brown people, us black people. And I'm glad that that actually came out. I really thought, at least she actually put out the video, because I've heard that there's a lot of other videos that have been clipped with information regarding our connection, both colors, to our galactic family. And as probably some of the viewers already, the listeners already know, is about the Dogon tribe, who, a beautiful, colorful tribe in West Africa. They speak on their extraterrestrial lineage. I mean, they speak about the Nomos, which was a race of, they were type of like frog-looking people, amphibious type of beings that came from Sirius B, from the star Sirius B. And they spoke about the star Sirius B before scientists even discovered it. And this is hundreds of years prior, because I think the scientists discovered Sirius B, don't quote me, I think 1970, I believe. And the Dogon tribe was speaking about that, and this is their historical, information that they've had for hundreds of years prior to having any, astronomical devices to be able to confirm
right.
that. So,
as a matter of fact, just seen Sirius C in 1995.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. So they just seen Emiya, because you have Ziggy Tolo, Polo Tolo, and Emiya. Emiya is Sirius C. They just seen that in 1995. So, yes, even though they documented the Dogon speaking about it in the 1930s, it wasn't until 40 years later that it was verified.
Wow. Isn't that interesting? But they kind of thought it was something like, just folklore, maybe something they were making up until they can verify it scientifically, and then it was verified. And also the Nomos, even though we talk about the Nomos being amphibious, really, and this shows how society and the way white supremacy kind of flip modes everything, those Nomos that came here were really like mermen and merwomen. The mermaids that we hear South Africans having interaction with, they were having trades with these people that were living in the water that were melanated, highly melanated brown people that they had a connection to. And some of us even believe that they had maybe some genetic connection to them, because some of the children were being born in some of those tribes with fused legs and some of the features of some of the mer people. So I believe maybe there was some mixing and hybriding going on there, and they had a interaction with them. I remember the Egyptian goddess Isis at one point was depicted as a mermaid from Sirius. So this is all coming from that small, little, simple, what they consider a simple tribe, who had all this phenomenal knowledge about their connection to the Cosmo people, their cosmic family.
Well, Isis, or said her name also was Mary, M-E-R, or as you do to say, mermaid later on.
That's right.
So we see that the word Mer means sea or illusion. It's the same as the word Maya, within the Aztec and Incas and, Toltec and, the rest of the Native American tribes. They also had that name for the illusion also, which stems from Maya or Mer, which means sea or illusion. So definitely.
Isn't that interesting that all these different cultures that were not necessarily side by side geographically had a lot of this information? And how were they able to get this information, though they were living on separate parts of the planet? Where were they getting the same information from, if it wasn't for something that was coming from above? Who else we have? Yes. We have Credo Mutua, which we all know, which is David Icke's, I hate to call him David Icke, because David Icke did bring more, bring him out to the forefront. But, you know, he's a Zulu healer from South Africa. Wonderful man. He has wonderful stories about his encounter with the extraterrestrials, all different types, especially the little blue people that used to come and interact with the children. We have that.
Right.
And who else you got? You have so many different accounts of people from the past, tribes in Africa, and also people here who've had encounters with melanated, black, negroid ETs. And it's interesting that even to this day, as I've been in this world a while now, and I speak to many a contactee, people who've had encounters, both white, black, you know, different cultures, different races, different backgrounds. And it's so interesting that even in 2016, many of the people I speak to that are of European descent have the hardest time wanting to come out when they're obviously having contact with these melanated beings. And they feel uncomfortable. It's almost like something inside of them makes them feel like this is not something they want to bring about. And I think it really has to do with some of their fears that this information coming out to maybe us would make us feel, I don't know, maybe more empowered. Because if we knew that we were connected, some of us, you know, we're all different, you know, not all brown and black people are from the same, you know, just because we're all brown and black, we're not of the same genealogy either. That's just something
right.
that, you know, white supremacy kind of meshed us all together in this little niche, and it's not true.
Right.
But I think they kind of keep it to themselves because they think if that comes out, it's going to empower us, and we'll get a little bit more information to maybe break out of the control system that we're under still.
Yeah, I think the types have a lot to do with that, too. What we're noticing is that, of course, we know the various blood types, that O negative blood is the oldest blood type, then, of course, then O positive, and then A negative, then A positive, and B negative, then B positive, and then AB negative, AB positive. What we notice is that, right, those with the negative types, these individuals have the ability, as we talked about before, to have slits in their eyes, especially when it comes to emotional issues or something in which that disrupt the emotional field or astral body, or what is also referred to as your auric field. It can be disrupted, and you gave some information on that the last time you was here, and I thought that was very interesting.
The blood types are very telling, and I wanted to add that a lot of mothers are not able to get the blood types of their children. I mean, it's not. I'm going to make a joke about it, but it's very serious that mothers are leaving hospitals now, giving birth to children, and are not able to get their children's blood type. And we're finding out that new blood types are showing up, and they don't want people to know. And we think that they're hybriding people at a high rate, and to the point where these new star seeds coming in are not the same children that were born previously. Interesting point. You're right, because now all of a sudden they're finding all types of different variations of blood types now, definitely beyond the 4 basic blood types. And we're starting to see, I've spoken to several doulas, midwives, women who are giving birth in hospitals and outside of, private hospices that are giving birth to children with an extra finger and an extra toe, 6 toes, 6 fingers, and that's becoming quite normal. And that's also, from what I know, is one of the characteristics of Anunnaki bloodline.
That is the truth.
From what we've heard. Yeah.
That's right. O negative blood types, it stems from them. But that was a trait in which that was just for them at that time. I mean, even the Bible speaks about Benjamin being born with 6 fingers on each hand.
Yeah. Yes, it's one of the traits. Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, it's definitely there. I went to school with a girl named Natasha. I think I was in kindergarten, and she had 6 fingers.
Exactly. And if they, it's functioning too a lot of times.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that attribute coming out, but also, there was a couple of the tribes were also saying that the Anunnaki would return at this time. And from the best of my knowledge and what I'm hearing from people, and I speak to people everywhere, whether it be in Finland or the Netherlands or, in Africa, in Nairobi, and, Egypt, wherever it is, we're hearing of accounts of really tall, not to say it doesn't happen in Africa, you see very tall black people in Africa, obviously, and Europe, because remember there's a big influx of immigration in Europe with Africans as well. But a lot of people are noting these strange-looking people that are very, very, very tall, that's abnormally tall, and with weird type of behavior, non-behavioral patterns, I should say. Just very odd individuals, and I believe, personally, I believe that we have a return of some of the ancestors coming back, and at this time, this would be the time that they would return, because we've, there's a planet that comes back at a certain time after a certain amount of years of rotation, and it comes back into our general atmosphere outside of the Earth, and I don't know that it's a planet, more a mothership.
Right. Well, I mean, they call it Planet X, Nibiru, or Nebaru, or actually it's the star Emiya, which is Sirius C on
Yes.
Right. So it's not a planet; it's actually a star, and we travel around Sirius A, B, and C in an elliptical pattern every 25,000 years. So actually, it's symbolic to a renewal of history, and yes, the return of these ancient ones of Anunnaki, which means those that fell from up there to here. At least based on Zechariah Sitchin's translation, I see it more as Anu as being up there on high, and Naki being the serpent on high, which esoterically is symbolic to Kundalini raising to the crown and the third eye chakra. So, these individuals have returned. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And also the home court advantage of the European is over. We go through cycles, and their cycle is ended. And every culture, and if you consider races to be a niche, I would say a niche, they all go through cycles where they rise and they fall. And we are at the end of a cycle of the Europeans, and at this particular time, we are going back into the home court advantage, what you would consider those ancestral seedlings of the Anunnaki. I see the change. Not everybody's seeing it, but what you're seeing is like upheaval, but really what it is a clearing of way. Everything has to be cleared out. Everything, that's why everything with the people of color is being illuminated. We knew about homeboys getting killed in the hood. It always happened. But why now is it being documented and we're seeing it on television? That's not for us. We knew it happened. It's for others to see that.
Indeed. I mean, recently this article's coming out that the Black Lives Matter is being funded by George Soros.
I believe it.
That's who's cutting their checks. So, I mean, it's best that we come back into understanding of self, like what you're referring to and talking about, as compared to just going out and following haphazardly.
Absolutely. I mean, we're just to remember who we are. That's basically what only thing we have to do to return to a more a balanced state of being. Once we remember who we were and we open up those parts of our memory and our codons, because all memories are within yourself. All memories. It's just a matter of you being able to access it. And with all the foods, the chemtrails, and, your bad behavior, your, questionable behavior, I should say, it can hinder you having access to those information. If I'm drinking Hennessy every Friday night or every day, it might hinder my ability to access certain informational codons that would be released to me when I'm mature enough, or I get to a certain spiritual vibrational level where I can access that to go to the next level of, of heightened spirituality. But if I'm not matching a vibration of that particular memory, I won't be able to access it. It's almost like a video game. If you don't, if you're not doing well again, in your video game, and you're not to a certain level, you're not going to get access to certain perks. You know what I mean? So
that's true.
We just have to, we have to look within and not look out, because everything inside of us is a mirror to what happens in our environment. And if we play into all this, supposed violence and all that stuff, it's just we're not going to be able to move on to the next stage of evolution. And it's happening whether we want it or not, but it just quickens the moment if you can just release, you know, obsessing with anything outside of you. That's all. Fix you, and you fix the world.
Indeed, indeed. I know you want to talk about the Mandela effect also.
It had us bugging out for a couple of weeks. We were on a rampage. Well, the Mandela effect is kind of like the theory that there are parallel universes that exist.
That's right.
Simultaneously to us, and at any given moment, you can go in and out of these parallel universes based on maybe your vibration changing, or maybe someone, you know, this is my theory, someone messing with the timeline and changing. You know, I believe that some people have hijacked our timeline. And,
that's where, like in the movie Matrix, when Neo seen the black cat and he said deja vu.
Yes, that's it. The deja vu, and that's actually true. And and I talked about before is that whenever you experience, I didn't experience deja vu. It was 2012. I remember this specifically because I was getting deja vu like quite a few times around the time. Right,
2012 was a serious year because. Yeah, even with me, I know I remember seeing I was experiencing a whole lot of deja vu experiences at that time, too.
I think they were messing with the timeline. But from after that, I really didn't get it. I don't even remember having it for a couple of years. Then all of a sudden, it started to come back in the last couple of weeks before the Mandela effect. And I was like, something's going on. You know, as you do research, the Mandela effect comes into play because then you start looking and you find this phenomenon called the Mandela effect where things are changing, little things. So let's just say, okay, so people know what we're talking about. Let's say you remember, everyone remembers Mandela in South Africa. Now, some people's memory, I don't know what you remember. Let's play this. What do you remember? Do you remember Mandela dying in prison, or do you remember him getting freed and becoming president?
Right. Everybody allegedly remembers him being free and becoming president.
But I thought that too. But I've spoken to 10 people who remember him dying in prison and remember the funeral in broadcast.
Yeah, see.
So how could we have such a strong variance? How about
I remember this too. I remember looking in Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition, in which that is stated that Aborigines, which is referring to us, so-called black, were not citizens of the United States. I went back later on that following year and seen that the definition was no longer there in that same way. So I know exactly what you're talking about because I've experienced it personally on several accounts. And I'm like, hold up, I know this was here. I know this. No, I wrote it down. I got it right here.
You see what I mean?
Down, but it's not here. Yes. Somebody's been tampering with the timeline. But even in Richard Hoagland, he spoke about, I remember on Coast to Coast years ago, in the mid-'90s, after the mid-'90s, I think around 96, 97, he was talking about hyperdimensional physics, in which that scientists found at least 27 different dimensions.
Yes, and they confirmed it. They just talked about that on Science Times a couple weeks, 2 weeks ago. They say that this actually exists. So you're saying to yourself something like that, like Sex. I remember Sex in the City. Some people, because I watch that, so I'm a New Yorker, so I watch Sex in the City.
Right,
most people nowadays.
Exactly.
Some people remember Sex and the City. I was like, that's crazy. It doesn't even sound right. Sex and the City. Just little things like that, little changes, and I love that you referenced the Matrix and Neo walking in the room with the black cat and saying that black cat change in any way. That's what it is. It's a glitch. They change something, but it only changes little aspects of reality. So it's something so slight, like a spelling of Bernstein Bears or Bernstein Bear. Something so slight that we don't really notice it, and if we do notice it, we'll just write it off as, maybe I just misspelled it, or maybe I misinterpreted what I remembered, which a lot of us do.
Right, it's just like I remember reading. Right, I remember reading in Behold the Pale Horse, written by William Bill Cooper.
Oh, yeah.
I remember reading where he stated that CIA statistics for so-called blacks was over 80 million. I went back and looked through the whole book 3 times, didn't find the quote, but I know I remember seeing that quote back in when I first got the book back in the early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
So
Well,
there's some serious playing going on here with this timeline. What you talking about? Because I know for sure that all of this. I know for sure.
Exactly. But what will bug you out even more? Try to look for the papers that you wrote it on. See, this is when it gets like freaky because people, like someone like you who's really big into knowledge and history, you'll write it down. You'll take notes. Try to look. This is the crazy part. You try to find where you wrote it down and everything is gone. It's gone. You can't. I have a book. I have Little People. So I have the Bernstein Bears. I know the Bernstein Bears because I grew up on it. I'm a woman of a certain age. I'm in my 40s. But I know how to spell Bernstein Bears and EI. I looked and I had their book in my house when I was researching the Mandela effect. I was like, no, it can't have changed. Don't you know I'm looking for the book that I've had in my house for always, and it is gone. The one in my house. So when I go to the library, it is Bernstein Bears, which AIN, which is crazy, and that's why it seems like it almost seems like very it's wild. It's, it's like a trip. It's like
right. But
and
the
have to
fact is that we can remember.
Yeah.
That's the scary part to them, is because we're not supposed to remember these things.
We're not, but that's because they're doing it too much. Remember, if they did it once, it's different. They're doing it several times. They're trying to fix things, and I personally believe that the murders and the assassinations of the President Kennedy, from my research, also Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, I believe that a bunch of Nazis from the future, this might flip people out because they'll be like, oh, Flora Broom's going on a tangent, but this is my personal belief. If you can believe that timelines can be changed, I believe some entities from the future came back and changed time, and it was a bunch of Nazis, and what they did is they hijacked the timeline with us, and they killed anyone that had to do with our uprising, because we were supposed to ride our consciousness. We're on a timer. We're melanated people. Our pineal gland, everything's on a timer. We're supposed to rise and awaken at a certain time, and you saw that in the 60s. But what they did, they hijacked it, and any leader or anybody who would invoke us to become fully conscious, they murked them. And I believe that was the reason why Martin Luther King was murdered, also Malcolm X, also quite a few other people. I'm just using buzz people that we know. Kennedy, I believe they were murdered. To basically alter our perspective and our future.
Right.
But they can only do that if we know that the timelines can be altered, but also we know that the universe does balance everything out. So even though we may be experiencing a shift in our timeline, it will level itself out. So it doesn't matter how many times they change it, their results will never be what they want. And that's why they keep doing it over and over, trying to get a different result. It's not going to happen.
Right. And what Pacific beings do you believe that is actually tampering with the timelines?
Well, this is my theory. I believe in the future we're going to have, at this particular time, the second and third sun are coming into play. And it's causing the magnetic field to be really, really strong. And the only people who were able to live on the surface of the planet were the original people, which are copper people, brown people, and more people, black people. It is a way also, we have entities that were created genetically, GMOs. I call them GMOs. I want to be, politically correct. That were created almost like an experiment, and they were only supposed to be here for a certain period of time. That time is done. So the planet does its own disinfection of anything that's not natural to it. So those people who are on the surface of the planet who cannot deal with the magnetic energy end up going underground. And we know that they're building tons of underground facilities.
Right.
Excuse me. We know that there is a physical pole shift as well as a spiritual pole shift. We shift inside, and as we shift and rise up and become conscious awake, we create a shift of the paradigm. That's what causes the pole shift, is when we wake up. And then we go back into the reverse, which is actually in our right direction. The Nile River went in a different direction at one time. So future, these entities, which are Europeans that go underground, they don't have a strong enough gene pool to be able to survive genetically. So they start to inbreed. Their genealogy becomes more recessive, even more than it is, and their trait becomes more blue-eyed and blonde-haired. I believe those entities in the future had access to time-traveling technology, and I believe that they traveled back towards when the Nazis got their information. And all these people who are saying that the Pelagians, I don't think they're Pelagians. They are not. They're white people that were underground. That's why the Nazis had this obsession with blonde hair, blue eye, because these entities were living in the ground, and they weren't able to get sunlight, and they weren't able to mix with people of color. So they're all very pale and blue-eyed and blonde hair. And that's why the Nazis had an obsession with it. It wasn't because they were blonde hair, blue-eyed. It's because these entities that had all this great technology that seemed like ETs came to them with all this wonderful information about what to do futuristically, and they gave them this information, with an exchange. And I believe that's who's doing the timeline hijacking. That's just my theory.
Right, the so-called Ashtar beings, as they refer to themselves.
Yes, they're not ETs. They are parasitic. They are archonic. They're vampiric. They feed off of the energies of people. They're not able to, again, in the future they change. Living underground, it changes their genetics, and also they become a little more psychic too. Again, I believe that's them, and also I believe that people who are having these experiences with these so-called Pelagians are having experience with these entities.
Right. Do you? What part does the Greys play in this, as far as their connection to the Ashtar beings, or as they refer to them?
Yeah, I believe that Greys also depreciated human beings that were, highly. There's a couple different types of Greys. So I believe the ones that associated with them are these beings that used to be humans, but because of the radiation and all that craziness that happens in the future for them and living on the ground, they become these like robotoid-looking gray little things. Or they could just be hybrid type of, how they test tube babies that they create, like robotoids type of things that they utilize.
Them children with them black eyes, them whole black eyes. I believe they're created. I mean, there's all different types of Greys, but I think the ones that they're utilizing are those. Right. Val Valerian speaks about that within his Matrix books 1, 2, and 3, and 4. That they were biosentient beings. That was possibly created by what he referred to them as the reptilians. But we know them really as the so-called Ashtar beings, or as you were saying, those who claim to be the Palladians. Of course, we know they're not. But yes, definitely. I see the point. Excellent.
And I don't want to disrespect. I'm not trying to disrespect, because a lot of the Palladian people get really offended when I speak about. Again, these are things that I'm surmising, just with what I've been researching, and it doesn't mean it's full proof or anything like that. I'm willing to change based on anything that I learned today, tomorrow, from you, from anyone. But what I see a lot of times is a lot of these Europeans do a lot of channeling. And we know that when you channel,
there's more and more of them saying that that these beings aren't Palladians, that they are possibly reptilians. Good. From their research, so I'm seeing more Europeans saying that themselves. So you don't have to apologize for anything. Like you say, we're open to discussion.
I try to be as open-minded too, because nothing can be solidified really. We're just all learning, and I always tell people I am not a teacher. I'm just someone sharing the information that I'm researching and hoping to get pieces of the puzzle myself. The only reason I came out and did this, and I was having contact experience from a child, and now that I speak to a lot of people, a lot of brown people, black people are having contact experiences, and it's beautiful, but it's sad we don't share it,
Right. I had my first one at the age of 9 when a UFO hovered like 150 yards over top of my head. I mean, it was so close. I was able to see it was so close. I was able to see the beings in the craft. you know, and the lights was going around it, in and out around the craft in the colors of the chakras. Roy G.
Yes, that's our people though.
And right, and that happened when I was 9 years old, walking, you know, back to my building, to the apartment in Coney Island, in New York.
See, you know, but this is another thing. This is another thing that was that we've been that documentation has misled us to believe that you cannot have contact or abducting experiences in the middle of the urban cities, and that's not true. A lot of people
that's definitely not true.
Right. Not true. Not in cornfields. I'm saying that does happen. I'm not saying that doesn't happen, but I'm saying a lot of the people I talk to, like you, are having it straight up in the middle of the city. Not everyone can see the craft because obviously we know they have a hologram, and only when that craft is associated with your DNA can you have access to seeing it. That's another thing. That's your people you're seeing. Right. That's why you can see it. It's associated with you.
That's right.
And also, some people are getting confused when they see certain crafts. Like when you see the colors of the chakras in different colors, that's magnetic energy they're using to propel that or using to drive that vehicle. Whereas opposed to the white one, which is reverse engineering that a lot of the governments have utilized, and they have crafts that look like UFOs, but they were reverse engineered technology that they've gotten from crafts.
Right.
No shit. And those are white ones.
Right.
Those are with electronic, not magnetic energy.
Right, or even metal ships, in which that even a book is called Man-Made UFOs, 1943, 1993, if I'm not mistaken, speaks about that. You know, it comes all the way up from, like you were saying, with the Nazis, you know, putting together their crafts and how that information was taken over by the OSS, you know, brought into the United States, forming NASA, you know, as well as the CIA in the 1950s. You know, and them continuing on with that technology into Area 51 and different other places. So
Thank
you.
And also, we have to denote that a lot of people that say that the Nazis left and went to the inner Earth, I would have to clarify it wasn't the inner Earth they were going into. If they went anywhere, it was to those underground bases with those already degenerated, blonde hair, blue-eyed, depreciated beings that they had contact with.
Right.
I personally don't believe, because the inner Earth beings, that's a whole other conversation. We can say that another time. But the inner Earth beings are higher conscious beings, and they don't want any of that. They won't allow your energy. First of all, your vibration, because when I've had contact with the other beings, your vibration doesn't match. You'll disintegrate, or your brain would be highly affected. You have neurological damage. There's no way you can go in there without matching frequency. So I know that's not true.
Right. You're definitely right, because there's actual, we call them light beings or lava beings, Cavallo Melchizedek, which I'm part of the order of the order of Melchizedek and the flower of life initiation up under Cavallo Melchizedek, and he broke down, you know, how these lava beings are some of the beings in which that exist in the earth. So we know that Dr. Malachi York speaks about the Deros, the Teros, you know, so forth and so on. You know, it's just it's so many beings and so different.
Oh my God.
Dr. Deborah Blair speaks about how the earth is like honeycombed. You know, there's caverns galore, and we know that. I mean, we go to any mountainous area, and there's caverns all over the place.
Oh my God! And a lot of us are not even taken. Well, I forgot who they were, and I wanted to bring them up. There's like a preacher. It was a fellow contactee. She brought about this preacher. He's in Africa. He exercises. He gets rid of demons and people, but the bugged out part about it is a whole bunch of black people, but he exorcises them from the mer people, saying that they go under the water, and he's trying to get these people to stop going and mating with the mer people under the water. It's bugged. Like it's a culture. He's taking these people are having dreams about going underneath the water, mating with their old lovers in the underground caverns with these mer people. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of Africans from certain tribes are mixed with them. They're from that genealogy. And they're being contacted by them. And,
right.
I know
there's a tribe in Africa right now called the ostrich people because their feet separates like ostriches.
Yes, I saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that.
Mm-hmm.
Where is that coming
right.
from? What kind of ET is that?
Exactly.
This is the thing we can't even fathom. And that's why when we use terms like people say, all the reptilians are negative, I said we can't fathom. It's like saying human beings. There's so many different types of human beings. There's black ones, brown ones, different cultures, different different religious beliefs. You can't blanket a whole race of something that you don't even know about. You can't. We can say we know that they exist, but we don't know to what degree that they are on each level because there's so many different types. So. Thank you. Sorry. So, I mean, I always tell people, be mindful. We're all learning and try not to, unless we know for a fact, because there's certain ETs obviously don't want to have any contact with. And you hear a lot of times. And to be honest, certain people are more likely to get an abductee experience than a contact experience. And from what I've learned, not to say people of color don't get abductee experiences where they get eggs taken from them. There are those who get that. But you'll hear more pleasant experiences from people who are brown, melanated, Aboriginal. We get more pleasant experiences, and the Europeans are being experimented on. They're getting more
anal probes. Right. And we won't be speaking about them anal probes. That's how that became a comedian joke.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, this is the type of things you're hearing, and that's why it's interesting when I came out to talk to other people about my experiences. Some of the experiences I was having were so drastically different from theirs. It made me question what I was going through because I'm like, well, it's not happening to me.
Right.
When I'm taken up, it's almost like I'm home with family. I know where I am. I feel a presence of love, and not so much love, but just knowing, just familiarity. Like I know who's there. I generally am taught things. It comes from such a wonderful base, and I'm wondering. I wondered why they were having. Now we know that a lot of white people have been genetically modified by ET.
Right.
And again, why a lot of this information is being hidden, we know why. But now I'm seeing that more and more people are coming out. You got, I think, do you know Maury, what's his name? Maury Rivera Toro. He did this is like, his video is like viral. He's like the Puerto Rican guy got abducted in Puerto Rico, a whole bunch of others. And he said, and they talked to him, they got to him before he did the interview. He said, I was taken by black. I love it. I want to do a remix of this. Black ETs. But not Negro. That's what he says. But not Negro. Who says that? Like nobody even says that. Nobody would even. He's from Puerto Rico, and I know a lot of Puerto Rican people. I'm from the islands myself. It's just not. It wouldn't even be natural for him to even state that. Why would you say black and then not Negro? What are you trying to hide? And come to find out, they did not want him to state. Even in the UFO community, they didn't want him to state that it was a black ET, a Negro ET that he had contact with. And it wasn't a negative experience he had. It was pretty pleasant. And from then, he's been a little apprehensive about talking about that because of that aspect that the ETs were melanated ETs. And we know that they exist because you got Olmec heads on every corner of the planet. Where is that coming from? They're in parts of Asia, they're in Europe, they're in the Americas, they're in South America. I mean, where are the Olmec heads coming if we did not have these melanated ETs? Who left those big heads? That some of them mimic some of the things on Mars. Who left those? I know if I had a head that looked like that, how do you have a head that looks like an Olmec head statue in South America and then have the same one in China? The same one. Who's doing that back then? Except somebody who was able to travel at the speed of light, on a craft that did not for us, at least. And they were able to travel and leave their mark, and they existed there. And I don't believe that black people all came from Africa. I think we're all over the earth. Personally, I think the Native Americans here look just like me and you, and the natives and just like the Eskimos look like me and you, and people in South America. And I'm talking about the look like me and you. I think that's all a lie to make us seem like we're all from one part of the earth and not all. We lived all on the surface, cold, warm, everything.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We're the natural indigenous type people that existed here, that were seeded here, at least.
Do they have any?
Degree. Go ahead, Brother Al.
Yeah. Do they have any sculptures like the Olmecs of the so-called Indians and Native Americans in the Americas? Have they ever found one?
No, not to my knowledge. But remember, when the Europeans came here first, and a couple of us are going into this now. This is the PSYOP thing, where they've told people of color that they're not from here, it's only Native Americans, and the Native American pictures you're seeing today are highly mixed with Europeans. If they have any Native American blood, they were the ones that we call them the $5 Indians, the ones who paid $5 so they could get all the perks of being Native Americans, and then they could claim to be Native Americans to get, tax-free things
on the
and
dog
schooling for free.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the Native Americans that they accounted to seeing, they said, look just like the ones from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
So who were they? So how did you distinguish? Personally, I don't think that all those Africans were taken over on their ships. I don't think they had that kind of. I don't think they would have the capability to do that. I think most of the people of color they had were already here.
Exactly.
And they do not want you to know that, and that's why when you try to go and get a Native American test right now, a genetic test, to try to get a card so that you can get some of the perks of your ancestors, they have it. They covertly have taken over that and have clinical studies that make sure that when you show up, your bloodline shows up, that they automatically say you are not of Native American descent.
Right.
But I know a whole lot of European type people who have cards, and they don't look nothing like a Native American to any degree.
Mm-hmm.
And we know visually, if you look, if you hold more than 40% of a particular gene pool, you are going to have visuals of looking like those people. If I'm looking at a total European with a straight nose, linear features, very thin lips, very straight hair. Well, Native Americans had straight hair because they were Asiatic black people looking people. But if you have blue eyes, how do you have enough blood of a Native American to be able to get a card, to identify you, whatever it is, to be a Native American, get those perks? But this is what I'm saying. They changed all history, and I have a brother who they changed the timeline, and slavery didn't even happen. They just convinced us some history books it did. That's interesting.
Wow.
That blew my mind. It was a moment. And that the only account we have of slavery is just in books, that it never really happened, and the only reason that we buy into it is because they changed history and they hijacked the timeline.
Exactly.
Well, that information is also suppresses the fact that.
I'm sorry, Brother L. Like I was going to say, it's the continuation of the $5 Indian, like you said.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's a fact. We know that when they had to distinguish the Native Americans to give them land and the reservations, all the whites have found out what the perks were for being Native Americans. So all they did is go to the person the person taking down the documentation, pay them $5. That's all it cost.
Right, the BIA, right, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, BIA, right.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. That's what they went through was the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, in which they had put forth the DOS roll, and they was able to say, okay, yeah, my last name William. Oh, there it is, it's right there on the DOS roll.
Isn't that crazy? Isn't that crazy? And then you wonder why you got Little Feather now with blonde hair, blue eyes, talking about she's head chief, of a tribe up in the Iroquois Nation. I mean, I think that's crazy to me, and I think it's really disgusting. I think it's tragic. And I see it everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when I go to powwows, I see us. At the powwows, it's us.
That's who makes America.
Right, but you're right. But when I'm seeing on TV, or when I'm seeing those in which that they're promoting, is always the blue-eyed ones, in which that always ends up on TV. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And they do it. They hijack genetically, they hijack everyone.
Right.
And that changes people's perspectives, too, because if they keep promoting that, then when you, as a person who's brown, say you're Native American, you get a side eye. You know, people are like, really? You know, what, you Indian in your family? You know, you get a side eye, like if you're stating is not fact, but visually you look 90% of what they look like.